Maya Thompson straightened her blazer one last time before entering the glass tower that housed Westfield International. The morning sun reflected off the building's surface, nearly blinding her as she pushed through the revolving doors. She'd spent 3 years preparing for this moment, graduating top of her class in international business, earning certifications in 7 different languages, and building a resume that should have opened any door in corporate America. The receptionist barely looked up when Maya introduced herself. "Take a seat. Mr. Harrison will see you when he's ready." Maya settled into the leather chair, watching employees rush past with coffee cups and laptops. Westfield International was one of the largest import-export companies in the country, handling deals worth millions across 4 continents. Landing a position here could change everything for her family back in Detroit. 45 minutes passed, then an hour. Maya watched 3 other candidates enter and leave Harrison's office, each spending no more than 15 minutes inside. She checked her phone, still nothing. The receptionist had long stopped acknowledging her presence. Finally, a tall man in an expensive suit emerged from the corner office. Richard Harrison looked exactly like his photo on the company website: silver hair, sharp jaw, and an expression that suggested he'd never been told no in his entire life. He glanced at Maya, then at his watch, then back at Maya with barely concealed annoyance. "You're still here," he said, not quite a question. "Come on then, I've got a lunch meeting in 20 minutes. Maya followed him into his office, her heart pounding. The space was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Awards and photos lined the walls, Harrison shaking hands with politicians, Harrison at charity galas, Harrison accepting recognition for his business acumen. He didn't offer her a seat. Instead, he remained standing behind his desk, flipping through her resume with one hand while checking his phone with the other. "So," Harrison began, his tone already dismissive, "tell me why I should waste my time here." Maya swallowed her rising frustration and launched into her prepared introduction. She spoke about her education, her language skills, her understanding of international markets. She mentioned her internship at a smaller firm where she'd successfully negotiated contracts with partners in South America and Asia. Harrison interrupted her mid-sentence. "Languages, right? Let me guess, you took some classes in college, maybe spent a semester abroad." He set her resume down without really looking at it. "Listen, kid, knowing how to order coffee in Spanish doesn't qualify you for international business. Actually, I'm fluent in." "We need someone with real experience," Harrison continued, speaking over her. "Someone who understands how serious money works. This isn't some diversity hire situation where we check boxes and pat ourselves on the back." He picked up his phone again, scrolling through messages. "The clients I work with expect a certain level of professionalism, sophistication. They're not going to take meetings seriously if I send someone who—" He trailed off, but Maya understood perfectly what he meant. She'd heard it before, though never quite so blatantly. Her fingers tightened around her portfolio case. "Mr. Harrison, if you just look at my references." "I've seen enough," he said, finally making eye contact. "You seem like a nice girl, smart probably, but Westfield International operates at a different level. We handle billion-dollar contracts with executives who have been in this business longer than you've been alive." He gestured toward the door. "I'd suggest looking at smaller companies, maybe something more entry-level." The dismissal was clear. Maya felt heat rising in her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from anger she had to suppress. She'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let this moment break her, but as she stood to leave, Harrison's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression changed instantly, from condescending boredom to something resembling panic. "I have to take this," he said, already turning away from her. "Show yourself out." Maya paused at the door, hearing Harrison's voice shift from confident to anxious as he answered the call. Something was wrong, very wrong. Maya should have left immediately, but something made her hesitate in the doorway. Harrison's voice had taken on an edge she hadn't heard before, sharp, stressed, almost desperate. "What do you mean they're pulling out?" Harrison said into the phone, his back still to Maya. "We've been working on the Jakarta deal for 8 months. Everything was set." Maya slowly closed the door behind her, but remained in the office. Harrison was too absorbed in his conversation to notice. "Language barrier," Harrison's voice rose. "We hired translators for every meeting. How is there suddenly a language barrier?" He listened, then exploded. "I don't care what it costs, find someone who speaks Indonesian. Today. This deal is worth $1.2 billion, Marcus. We are not losing it because of a translation issue." He slammed his hand on the desk. Maya watched his shoulders tense as he listened to the response. Through the glass walls, she could see other employees glancing toward the office, aware something significant was happening. "The contract signing is in 6 hours, Harrison said, his voice dropping to something between anger and pleading. "They're in Los Angeles right now at the Peninsula Hotel. If we don't get someone there who can explain the revised terms in their language, they're flying home tonight and taking their business to our competitors." He paused. "No, regular Indonesian isn't enough. They speak a specific dialect, Javanese. The translator we used before apparently only knew basic Indonesian, and they felt disrespected." Maya's pulse quickened. She spoke Javanese. Not just basic conversational skills. She'd studied it intensively for 2 years with a professor from Yogyakarta, specifically because she knew how underserved that market was in American business. Harrison ended the call and stood there, staring out his window at the city below. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he seemed to remember Maya was still there. He turned around, his expression shifting from stressed to irritated. "Why are you still here? I said we're done." Maya took a breath. Every instinct told her to walk away, to let this arrogant man fail, to find an employer who would actually respect her. But another part of her, the part that had fought through every obstacle to get here, saw an opportunity. "I speak Javanese," Maya said quietly. Harrison blinked. "What?" "Javanese. The Indonesian dialect your client speaks. I'm fluent." Harrison stared at Maya like she'd just claimed to speak Martian. "You speak Javanese," he repeated, his tone flat with disbelief. "Sure you do." Maya met his gaze steadily. "I studied it for 2 years under Professor Widodo at Georgetown. I spent 6 months in Central Java working with textile manufacturers. I can read, write, and negotiate in Javanese, including the formal registers used in business contexts." For the first time since she'd entered his office, Harrison actually looked at her. Really looked. His eyes narrowed with suspicion, but she could see the calculation happening behind them. He was desperate enough to at least consider it. "Even if that's true," he said slowly, "you have 0 experience with deals at this level. These are the Hartono family, one of the wealthiest families in Southeast Asia. They're not going to negotiate a billion-dollar contract with some kid fresh out of college." "Then you'll lose the deal," Maya said simply, "because according to your phone call, you don't have any other options." Harrison's jaw tightened. She'd hit a nerve. He picked up his phone, made a call, and spoke curtly. "Marcus, does the Hartono file mention their language?" A pause. "And we don't have anyone else." Another pause, longer this time. "Fine, send me everything we have on them, now." He hung up and looked at Maya with an expression somewhere between desperation and hostility. "If you're lying to me, if you waste their time or embarrass this company, I will make sure you never work in this industry. Do you understand?" "I understand," Maya said. "Do you understand that I want this position in writing if I save your deal?" The audacity of her demand seemed to shock him. For a moment, she thought he might throw her out anyway. Then something shifted in his expression, maybe respect, maybe just ruthless pragmatism. "You get me this contract signed and we'll talk," Harrison said. "But first, you're going to prove you can actually do what you claim." His computer pinged. He turned the screen toward her. "This is the message we received an hour ago from the Hartono family's representative. It's in Javanese. Tell me what it says." Maya leaned forward and read the text. Her heart sank as she absorbed the words, but her face remained neutral. She understood now why Harrison was so panicked. This wasn't just about language barriers. "They're not just threatening to pull out," Maya said carefully. "They feel insulted. They believe your company deliberately hired inadequate translators to diminish them during negotiations. They think it shows disrespect to their culture and their business acumen." Harrison went pale. "Can this be fixed?" Maya thought about walking away, about letting this man face the consequences of his arrogance and prejudice. But she also thought about what this opportunity could mean, not just for her, but for everyone who'd been dismissed before getting a real chance. "Maybe," she said, "but we need to leave now." The drive to the Peninsula Hotel took 30 minutes through Los Angeles traffic. Harrison spent the entire time on the phone, barking instructions to his team, while Maya reviewed the contract documents on her tablet. The deal involved importing high-end textiles and manufactured goods from Indonesia, establishing Westfield International as the exclusive American distributor for the Hartono family's enterprises. $1.2 billion over 5 years, Harrison muttered, ending another call. He glanced at Maya and she could see him warring with himself, needing her help but resenting that need. The Hartonos built their fortune in manufacturing. 3 generations. They value tradition, respect, and family honor above everything else. "I know," Maya said, not looking up from the documents. "I've read about them." "Of course you have," Harrison said, though his sarcasm was weaker than before. They pulled up to the hotel. Harrison's phone rang again. This time his face went from stressed to horrified as he listened. When he ended the call, his hands were shaking. "They're leaving in 45 minutes, he said. "They've already called for cars to take them to the airport." He looked at Maya with something approaching desperation. "If you can't fix this." "Just let me do my job," Maya said, stepping out of the car. The Peninsula's lobby was elegant and hushed. Harrison led her to a private conference room where his assistant, Jennifer, was waiting with printed contracts and refreshments. The woman looked frazzled, her usual composure cracking under the pressure. "They won't even come down," Jennifer whispered. "Mr. Hartono's daughter said they have nothing more to discuss with people who don't respect them." "Which room?" Maya asked. Harrison gave her the suite number. Without waiting for approval, Maya walked to the elevator. She heard Harrison following behind her, but she didn't slow down. The moment for hesitation had passed. She'd spent years preparing for opportunities like this. She just never imagined it would come from someone who dismissed her so completely an hour ago. At the suite door, Maya paused. She could hear voices inside. An elderly man speaking in rapid Javanese, a younger woman responding in English tinged with frustration. Maya knocked, 3 firm raps that echoed in the quiet hallway. The door opened. A woman in her 30s appeared, her expression guarded and already forming a polite rejection. But Maya spoke before she could. "Sujeng Son, Bu Dewi. Kula Maya Thompson Saking Westfield International. Kula Nyuwan Pangapunt and Sanjit Amargi Kailpatan in Kang Sampan Kalampahan." The woman's eyes widened in shock. Behind her, the elderly man's voice fell silent. Maya's formal Javanese greeting, apologizing sincerely for the mistakes that had occurred, hung in the air. Dewi Hartono stood frozen in the doorway, clearly stunned to hear her native language spoken so correctly by the young black woman before her. Behind her, an elderly man appeared, his weathered face sharp with intelligence and curiosity. "Bapak Hartono," Maya said, bowing slightly with the proper gesture of respect. "It is an honor to meet you. I apologize deeply that your first experience with our company was so disappointing." The old man studied her for a long moment, then spoke in Javanese. "Your pronunciation is very good. Where did you learn?" "From Professor Widodo in Washington and from 6 months living in Yogyakarta," Maya replied, still in Javanese. I worked with textile manufacturers there. Small operations, nothing like your distinguished company, but they taught me that respect and understanding are the foundation of all good business. Something shifted in Bapak Hartono's expression. He glanced at his daughter, then back at Maya. Finally, he stepped aside. "Come in, but only you, not the man who wasted our time before." Harrison started to protest from behind Maya, but she turned and gave him a look that clearly said, "Stay back." For once, he listened. Inside the suite, Maya sat across from Bapak Hartono and Dewi. A younger man, probably a son or nephew, stood near the window, arms crossed, still skeptical. The room was filled with packed luggage, confirmation that they'd been serious about leaving. "Why should we continue talking to Westfield International?" Bapak Hartono asked, switching to English now. "They showed us no respect. The translator they hired barely spoke Indonesian, let alone Javanese. During every meeting, we felt dismissed and diminished. Is this how American companies treat their partners?" Maya took a breath. She could make excuses, could try to smooth everything over with corporate platitudes. But she'd learned in Java that honesty, delivered respectfully, mattered more than empty words. "No, Pak," she said. "What happened was wrong. The company failed you, but I believe it came from ignorance, not malice. Many American businesses don't understand the importance of cultural respect in international relations. They think money alone builds partnerships." She paused. "They're wrong." Dewi leaned forward. "And you, do you believe this?" "I believe that business without respect is just transaction," Maya said. "My grandmother taught me that trust takes time to build but seconds to destroy. Your family has built something remarkable over 3 generations. Westfield International should have approached you with humility, not arrogance." Bapak Hartono was quiet for a moment. Then he asked in Javanese, "What do you know of our business?" Maya spent the next 20 minutes discussing the Hartono family's operations, not just the facts from files, but understanding their philosophy, their commitment to sustainable manufacturing, their reputation for treating workers fairly. She spoke mostly in Javanese, occasionally switching to English when discussing technical terms. The old man's expression gradually softened, his daughter's skepticism giving way to something like approval. Finally, Bapak Hartono held up his hand. "You understand us. This is clear. But understanding and business are different things. What makes this deal good for my family?" And there it was, the real negotiation. Maya pulled out her tablet and began walking through the revised contract terms, explaining each clause, answering every question with patience and precision. When Dewi pointed out a concern about shipping logistics, Maya didn't make promises she couldn't keep. Instead, she acknowledged the issue and suggested they work together to find solutions that benefited both companies. An hour passed, then another. No one mentioned leaving anymore. By the time Maya finished presenting the revised terms, the sun was setting over Lowe's Angels, painting the hotel suite in amber light. Bapak Hartono sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. He'd barely spoken for the last 30 minutes, just listened intently as Maya walked through every aspect of the partnership. "You have impressed me," he said finally in English. "But I must ask, who are you in this company? What is your position?" Maya felt her stomach tighten. This was the moment of truth. She could lie, could exaggerate her role, could pretend to have authority she didn't actually possess. But that would betray everything she just built with them. "I interviewed for a position this morning," Maya said carefully. "Mr. Harrison rejected me. When he discovered you were leaving because of the language barrier, I offered to help." She met the old man's eyes. "I have no official role at Westfield International. I came here today because I believed I could bridge the gap between your family and this company. Nothing more." The room fell silent. Dewi exchanged a long look with her father. The younger man by the window straightened up, clearly surprised by Maya's honesty. Bapak Hartono's expression was unreadable. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. not mockingly but with genuine amusement. "So you risked everything on principle," he said, shaking his head. "You have courage. That is rare." He stood up, moving to the window to look out at the city. "In my grandfather's time, he built our business with men and women who had courage, people who understood that trust matters more than temporary profit." He turned back to Maya. "I will sign this contract, but only if you are our primary contact at Westfield International, only if you manage this partnership. If Mr. Harrison agrees to this, we have a deal. If not," he gestured toward the door, "we will find another American partner who values what you represent." Maya felt her heart race. She'd just been handed enormous leverage, but also an impossible situation. Harrison would never agree to this. He'd spent an hour dismissing her qualifications, her experience, her very presence. Would his desperation outweigh his pride? "I need to speak with Mr. Harrison," Maya said, standing. "May I have 10 minutes?" Babak Hartono nodded graciously. Maya stepped into the hallway where Harrison had been packing for the past 2 hours. He rushed toward her immediately, his face a mask of anxiety and hope. "Well, are they signing?" "Yes," Maya said, "on one condition." She explained Babak Hartono's terms. As she spoke, she watched Harrison's expression cycle through shock, anger, disbelief, and finally calculation. He started to speak several times, each time stopping himself. She could practically see him weighing his options, his ego battling against reality. "This is blackmail," he finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. "This is business," Maya countered, "and it's non-negotiable. They'll walk if you say no." Harrison looked at her with something between hatred and grudging admiration. The power dynamic had completely reversed in the span of 2 hours. The woman he dismissed as unqualified now held his billion-dollar deal in her hands. "Fine," he said through clenched teeth. "You manage the account, but don't think." "I want it in writing," Maya interrupted. "Full-time position, senior account manager title, competitive salary, benefits. And I want you to agree before I go back in that room." For a moment she thought he might refuse out of pure spite. Then he pulled out his phone and called his office. "Jennifer, draw up an employment contract for Maya Thompson, Senior Account Manager, International Division, standard compensation package. I need it ready in an hour." He ended the call and glared at Maya. "Satisfied?" "Not yet," Maya said, "but I will be." She turned and walked back into the suite, leaving Harrison in the hallway with his shattered pride. 3 months later, Maya sat in her new office, smaller than Harrison's, but with the same stunning city views. The Hartono contract had been just the beginning. Word had spread quickly through international business circles about the young woman who spoke 9 languages and understood cultural nuance better than most veterans in the field. Westfield International's international division had grown by 30%, and Maya had been the driving force behind most of those new partnerships. Her desk was covered with contracts, proposals, and flight itineraries. Next week she'd be in Brussels meeting with textile importers. The week after that, Sao Paulo. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages in different languages: Portuguese, Mandarin, Arabic, French. She'd become invaluable, exactly as she'd always known she could be. There was a knock on her door. Harrison stood there, looking uncomfortable. In the months since their confrontation at the peninsula, they'd maintained a coldly professional relationship. He approved her decisions but rarely spoke to her directly, channeling communications through other managers whenever possible. "The board wants to see you," he said stiffly. "5th floor, conference room A." Maya felt a flutter of nerves. Board meetings were reserved for major announcements. "Do you know what it's about?" Harrison's jaw tightened. "I'm sure they'll tell you themselves." 20 minutes later, Maya sat at a massive conference table surrounded by Westfield International's board of directors. The CEO, Margaret Crawford, smiled warmly at her. "Maya, we've been extremely impressed with your work these past months," Crawford began. "The Hartono partnership has exceeded all projections. You've opened doors we didn't even know existed. Your cultural competency and language skills have proven invaluable." "Thank you," Maya said, unsure where this was going. "We're restructuring the international division," Crawford continued. "We're creating a new position, Director of International Relations and Cultural Integration. We'd like to offer it to you." Maya's breath caught. Director level. She'd be one of the youngest directors in company history. "The position comes with significant responsibility," Crawford added. "You'd oversee all international accounts, hire and train your own team, and report directly to the executive committee. You'd also be working closely with Mr. Harrison to ensure alignment with overall company strategy." She paused, glancing at the other board members. "Though truthfully, we expect you'll be teaching him more than the other way around." Maya saw Harrison shift uncomfortably in his seat across the table. She met his eyes, and in that moment she saw him truly understand what had happened. His snap judgment, his arrogance, his dismissal of her, it had all been wrong. And now she would be his equal, possibly even his superior one day. "I accept," Maya said, her voice steady and clear. After the meeting, Maya returned to her office to find an email from Dewi Hartono. The Hartono family wanted to expand their partnership, adding 3 new product lines. They insisted Maya handle the negotiations personally. Attached to the email was a note in Javanese. "You showed us respect when others showed us indifference. That is why we trust you. That is why we succeed together." Maya leaned back in her chair and looked out at the city. She thought about the girl who'd sat in Harrison's office 3 months ago, dismissed and disrespected, told she didn't have what it took. She thought about all the times she'd been underestimated, all the doors that had closed before she could even speak. But she also thought about her grandmother's words, spoken to her before every big moment. "They'll try to make you small. Don't let them. You carry generations of strength. Show them who you really are." Maya smiled, opened her laptop, and began drafting a response to Dewi. She wrote in perfect Javanese, her fingers flying across the keys. She had work to do, partnerships to build, barriers to break, and a path to clear for everyone who would come after her. The girl Richard Harrison had mocked for her resume was now the woman who'd saved his company and built something he never could have imagined. And she was just getting started.